In the early 16th century, the Aztec Empire was a vibrant and powerful civilization. At its heart was the magnificent city of Tenochtitlan, built on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. This bustling metropolis was a marvel of engineering and organization, with towering pyramids, grand palaces, and sophisticated systems of canals and causeways that connected it to the mainland. Daily life for the Mexica, the people we often call the Aztecs, was deeply structured around agriculture, trade, and religious devotion. Farmers cultivated crops on chinampas or floating gardens, which provided abundant food for the city's large population. The markets were filled with goods from all corners of the empire, a testament to their extensive trade networks. The society was hierarchical, with the emperor, or Huitlahuacanni, at the very top. Below him were nobles, priests, and warrior elites who held significant power and influence. The majority of the population consisted of commoners, farmers, artisans, and merchants. Religion was central to every aspect of their existence. They worshipped a complex pantheon of gods and goddesses who they believed controlled the natural world. To appease these deities and ensure the continued prosperity of their empire, the Mexica practiced elaborate rituals, which sometimes included human sacrifice. This was a deeply ingrained part of their worldview, a necessary act to maintain balance and order in the cosmos. Life followed the rhythm of the seasons and a sophisticated calendar system. Children were educated in schools that taught them history, religion, and practical skills according to their social class and gender. Boys from noble families were trained for leadership roles in warfare, while commoner boys learned trades or farming. Girls were taught domestic skills and the responsibilities of managing a household. The empire was not a single unified state, but a collection of city-states that paid tribute to the dominant power of Tenochtitlan. This system created wealth and stability for the core of the empire, but also resentment among the conquered peoples, who were forced to provide goods and labor. This was the world that existed before the arrival of outsiders from across the Great Eastern Sea. It was a world rich in culture, tradition, and power, but it was also a world with internal tensions. The Mexica saw themselves as the center of their universe, chosen by their patron god, Huitzilopochtli, to rule. They had no idea that their well-ordered society was on the verge of a cataclysmic encounter that would challenge everything they knew. The arrival of strange ships on their shores in 1519 would mark the beginning of the end for their magnificent empire, and change the course of history in the Americas forever. In 1519, a Spanish expedition landed on the coast of what is now Mexico. This group of about 500 men was led by an ambitious and determined conquistador named Hernán Cortés. They had sailed from Cuba, defying the orders of the Spanish governor, driven by powerful motivations. The Spanish crown, and the men who served it, were primarily seeking wealth. They had heard rumors of a powerful and wealthy empire in the interior of this new land, a place filled with gold and other precious resources. This lust for treasure was a primary driver for their dangerous journey into the unknown territory. They were also motivated by a desire for glory and to expand the Spanish Empire's influence. Beyond the pursuit of gold and glory, the Spanish had a profound religious mission. They were devout Catholics who believed it was their sacred duty to convert non-Christian peoples to their faith. In their eyes, the religious practices of the native peoples, particularly the act of human sacrifice, were barbaric and needed to be eradicated. This combination of greed and religious zeal gave the conquistadors a powerful sense of purpose. They saw their invasion not merely as a conquest for material gain, but as a holy crusade. Cortés was a master of manipulation and strategy, and he skillfully used these motivations to keep his men loyal and focused on the ultimate prize, the Aztec capital. The contrast between the two cultures was stark and profound. The Aztecs lived in a world shaped by their unique understanding of the cosmos, their polytheistic beliefs, and their intricate social structures. Their technology was advanced in many ways, with impressive architecture and agricultural systems, but they lacked certain key innovations known to the Europeans. They did not have iron or steel, which meant their weapons, made of wood and obsidian, were no match for Spanish swords and armor. They also had no knowledge of gunpowder, cannons, or firearms, which gave the invaders a terrifying advantage in battle. The sight of men on horseback was also completely alien, as horses were not native to the Americas. These technological and ideological differences created a massive gulf between the two groups. The Spanish viewed the Aztecs as primitive savages who needed to be civilized and saved, while the Aztecs were initially unsure how to perceive these strange newcomers. Some accounts suggest that the Aztec emperor, Moctezuma II, may have initially believed Cortés was the returning god Quetzalcoatl, a misunderstanding that perhaps led to early hesitation. This clash of worldviews, where one side sought dominance and the other struggled to comprehend the threat, set the stage for a dramatic and violent conflict that would reshape the continent. Hernán Cortés quickly realized that his small force of soldiers could not conquer the mighty Aztec Empire alone. He was a shrewd strategist and understood the political landscape of the region. The Aztec Empire had many enemies among the peoples it had conquered and forced to pay tribute. These subjugated city-states harbored deep resentment toward their Mexica overlords. Cortés cleverly exploited these existing rivalries to his advantage. He began to forge crucial alliances with these disaffected groups, most notably the Tlaxcalans, who were fierce rivals of the Aztecs and had long resisted their rule. They saw an alliance with the Spanish as an opportunity to finally defeat their old enemy. These native allies were indispensable to the Spanish campaign. They provided the conquistadors with tens of thousands of warriors, which massively outnumbered the Spanish forces, and even rivaled the Aztec armies. These allied fighters offered essential support, including food, supplies, and knowledge of the local terrain and Aztec military tactics. They fought alongside the Spanish in every major battle, and their contribution was arguably the most critical factor in the eventual downfall of Tenochtitlan. Without the support of groups like the Tlaxcalans, it is highly unlikely that Cortés's small expedition could have ever succeeded in challenging the full might of the Aztec military machine. While alliances provided the necessary military strength, an invisible and even more deadly weapon was also at play: disease. The peoples of the Americas had been isolated from the continents of Europe, Asia, and Africa for thousands of years. As a result, they had no immunity to the diseases that were common in the Old World. When the Spanish arrived, they unknowingly brought with them devastating pathogens like smallpox, measles, and influenza. These diseases spread like wildfire through the native population, who had no natural defenses against them. The impact was catastrophic, creating a demographic collapse of unprecedented scale. The smallpox epidemic that swept through Tenochtitlan in 1520 was particularly devastating. It arrived just as the Aztecs had successfully driven the Spanish from their city. The disease killed a vast portion of the population, including soldiers, leaders, and even the new emperor who had replaced Moctezuma. This plague weakened the Aztec society from within, decimating their ranks and shattering their morale. When Cortés and his allies returned to besiege the city, they faced a population that was already gravely weakened by sickness. The combination of strategic alliances and catastrophic disease created a perfect storm that the once invincible Aztec Empire could not withstand. The final siege of Tenochtitlan in 1521 was a brutal and protracted affair. Cortés and his Tlaxcalan allies surrounded the island city, cutting off all supplies of food and fresh water. For months they engaged in relentless house-to-house fighting, slowly tightening their grip on the starving and disease-ridden defenders. The Aztecs, led by their final emperor, Cuauhtémoc, fought with incredible bravery and desperation, but the odds were insurmountable. The Spanish cannons and ships controlled the lake, while their native allies overwhelmed the city's defenses. On August 13, 1521, after a heroic last stand, Cuauhtémoc was captured, and the magnificent city of Tenochtitlan fell. The conquest brought immediate and profound changes to the lives of the Aztec people. The old social and political order was completely dismantled. The Spanish established themselves as the new ruling class, replacing the Aztec emperor and nobility. The surviving native population was subjected to Spanish rule, and their lands were divided among the conquistadors under a system known as the encomienda, which forced them into labor. The great temples and pyramids of Tenochtitlan were torn down, and on their ruins the Spanish began to build a new colonial capital, Mexico City. The stones of the old gods were used to construct churches for a new one. The cultural and religious transformation was just as drastic. Spanish priests and missionaries arrived in droves, determined to convert the indigenous population to Christianity. They systematically suppressed native religious practices, destroyed sacred texts and idols, and imposed Catholic doctrine. While many natives outwardly adopted the new faith, they often blended it with their old beliefs, creating a unique syncretic form of religion that combined elements from both traditions. The Spanish language was imposed, and new customs, laws, and social norms were introduced, forever altering the fabric of life in the region and beginning the process of creating a new mixed society. The legacy of the Spanish conquest is deeply embedded in the identity of modern Mexico. The event marks the birth of a new nation, forged from the violent collision of two worlds. Today, Mexican culture is a rich and complex tapestry woven from both indigenous and Spanish threads. This dual heritage is visible everywhere, from the country's language and religion to its food, art, and customs. The fall of the Aztec Empire was a tragic end for a remarkable civilization, but it also laid the foundation for the multicultural nation of Mexico that exists today, a nation that continues to grapple with and celebrate its complex and often painful history.